Today we shall discuss about the electric charge distribution on different surfaces. See, we know that suppose if I consider one charged body, say for example, it has a charge of 3 microcoulomb, for example, 3 microcoulomb of positive charge. That means this body has become positively charged by losing electrons. Now, using this body, I want to charge another body, another substance. Say for example, I consider this as a metallic sphere, means conductor. I consider another conductor, either of the same size, same shape, or of different size and different shape. How can I charge this uncharged conductor now? So this is conductor 1, let us call, and this is conductor 2, which is uncharged. Simply if I make the contact of this with this conductor, then it gets charged. Okay? So if I make the contact of this with this by some method, so that this conductor also gets charged, or else what can I do? Instead of making contact, I can also connect a wire, piece of metallic wire. Now what happens? As soon as I connect the wire, electron starts flowing from this conductor. Electron starts flowing from this conductor towards this conductor, from conductor 2 to conductor 1. So by losing electron, this conductor also starts becoming positively charged. So this is how I can charge this positively. Understand? From this conductor to this conductor, I can charge by connecting a wire. If the electron flows like this, then it becomes positive charge. This conductor, by gaining electron, the amount of positive charge goes on decreasing. After some time, it may have 2 microcoulomb of positive charge, and this conductor may have 1 microcoulomb of positive charge. Here in this case, in this process, what is that we have to understand means how the electron flows here. We know that according to the principle of quantization, charge on a body is always equal to integer multiple of fundamental charge, where n can take the value 1, 2, 3 dash dash dash. If I substitute n as equal to 1, it will be 1e, which becomes the charge of 1 electron. If I substitute n equal to 2, then it becomes 2e, which becomes the charge of 2 electron. Similarly, if I substitute n equal to 3, then it becomes 3e, which is the charge of 3 electron. So from this conductor, how can the electron flow? Electron has to flow 1 by 1. That means minimum 1 electron can flow, or 2 electron can flow, or 3 electron can flow, like that. But there is no flow of 1.5 electron or 2.8 electron from conductor 2 to conductor 1. Charge cannot flow in fraction. 1.5 electron, half electron, fraction, it's not possible. That is the meaning of charge is quantized. Charge is quantized, which is one of the property of electric charge. From this conductor to this conductor, either 1 electron can flow, 2 electron can flow, 3 electron can flow at a time, but not 1.5 electron, 2.5 electron or 3.9 electron like this. Fractional charge flow is not permitted according to the principle of quantization. Using principle of quantization, we went on studying about the discontinuous charges. Discontinuous charges, not about continuous charges. What does it mean? Suppose if I consider a set of charges like this, say for example, Q1 is one charge, Q2 is another charge, Q3 is another charge. Discontinuous means you can see between any two charges enough space is there. The space is not too small. the space is wide enough. Therefore, they got distributed separately from one another. That is the meaning of discontinuous. So, for discontinuous charges like this, if I want to find an electric field at the point P, say, what we used to do? First, we find electric field at the point P due to this charge. Next, from this charge. Next, from this charge. Okay, by using the principle of superposition of charges. Similarly, if I want to find the force acting on any one of the charge due to other charges, that means if I want to find the force on the charge Q1 due to the charge Q2 due to the charge Q3, then also we made use of principle of superposition. That means force acting on the charge Q1 due to Q2, force acting on the charge Q1 due to Q3. After finding the force acting on the charge, we used to find the net force acting on the charge Q1 using the principle of superposition. Here also, after finding the electric field, here electrostatic force, here electric field. After finding the electric field at the point P from individual charges, we used to add it up by making use of principle of superposition. So far, why we used to deal only with the discontinuous charges or discrete charges. The other name for discontinuous is discrete. According to principle of quantization, charge on a body is discrete. That means a body can take the charge either 1e or 2e or 3e. But a body cannot take the charge 1.5e, 2.5e, 3.5e. This is not permitted. That is the meaning of discontinuous or discrete. That is what I told here. Either one electron can flow, or 2 electron can flow, or 3 electron can flow following one another, but 1.5 electron, 1.6 electron flow is not going to take place here. That's not possible. That is the meaning of discrete or charges quantized. So we used to deal by considering only the discrete charges, discontinuous charges, means where the space between any two charges is found to be sufficient. Enough space you can notice. The space between them is not too small to ignore, because if we use principle of quantization, calculation became simple whenever we used to deal with the discrete or discontinuous charges. But in most of the cases, we have to consider the continuous distribution of charges. But whenever we come across the continuous distribution of charge instead of discrete or discontinuous distribution of charge, then the principle of quantization or the principle of superposition is not so convenient to use. So as a result of this, what we can understand, we have two types of distribution of charges. One is discontinuous or non-uniform distribution, which is also known as discrete distribution, and other one is continuous or uniform distribution of charges. What is the difference you notice between these two? In this case, you can notice only few charge got distributed here non-uniformly, and space, you observe the space between the charges. Again, here also non-uniform, only few charge got distributed with enough space between them. Here lot of separation is there between this charge and this charge, this charge and this charge. Here only few charges got distributed, only 2 charges got distributed here. So that is why it is considered to be non-uniform distribution or discontinuous distribution of charges. For this type of distribution, either we can make use of the quantization rule or the principle of superposition of charges to find either the net field or the net force acting on any one of the charge. But when we come across continuous distribution of charges like this, then we have to follow a different method, because principle of quantization is not so convenient to this situation. Then at microscopic level and at macroscopic level, what is meant by microscopic level? As an example, suppose if I consider a sieve like this, is quite common, which is used in kitchens for destoning some food grains. Suppose independently, if I am able to see all the holes at a very short distance from my eye, comfortable distance, then it is nothing but microscopic. At microscopic level, individually we can see all the holes. At macroscopic, that means at a very large distance, I cannot see the holes independently, but I can see only one plane surface attached to this metallic ring. So that's the difference between the continuous and as well as discontinuous. Or else I can consider one more example. What is that example means? Suppose if I consider one circle like this. I am going to mark certain points. Okay. If I see this from a very close distance, then I can see all the dots independently, separately, separated by some small space. That is nothing but discrete, because enough space I can see between any two dot marks. Suppose if I see the same circle at a very large distance, too large distance, say for example right from here. Suppose if I set my eye at a suitable large distance and if I observe the same circle containing dots in columns, then what I can see? I can see these dots in the form of line. All these dots found to be joined and appear to be in the form of a straight line when we observe this from a very large distance. So that is macroscopic view. So close to this, if I am able to see the dots independently like this, that is microscopic view. For microscopic view, principle of superposition or quantization rule, okay, no problem. But for macroscopic, we have to follow a suitable method which is convenient for calculation. To calculate what? At macroscopic level, what is that we have to calculate? Say for example, here there is a uniform distribution of charge on a surface. Okay. Suppose if I want to find the net electric field somewhere here at the point P due to this continuous distribution of charge, then what I do means I make use of one small element. That means I select one small element like this, which is of any shape. Here I have taken one square shaped small elemental area. Then within this area, how much charge is distributed? That means density of the charge. So whenever we consider macroscopic level, then the word density gains some importance. What is meant by density? I am not considering the ordinary density. Ordinary density is mass per unit volume. So here I can consider like this, density as defined as mass per unit dimension. Unit dimension. It may be, dimension may be anything. It may be with respect to one dimension, it may be with respect to two dimension, it may be with respect to three dimension. So the term density plays an important role whenever we consider the continuous distribution of charge. And if you want to find the total field at this point due to this entire continuous distribution of charge on the surface, first I choose one small elemental area, let us call this area as delta A. Then from this elemental area, I find what is the electric field at this point due to this elemental area. Okay, let us call this as E1. Then what I do means, similarly, I am going to imagine number of small elements like this. This is one small element and this is one small element, identical elements. Then from each of the element, what will be the electric field? What will be the electric field at the point P? So we are going to find the field like this from independent small elemental area. Then we are going to add it up. When we add it up, then we to find the net electric field, what we do means, instead of adding, we use the calculus method. That means we use the integration. So that is another basic difference between microscopic view and macroscopic view. So we are using integration to sum up or to find the total of something else here, means we are using calculus. Whereas at microscopic level, we never made use of calculus. At macroscopic level, we are going to use the calculus method to find the net field or the net force due to this continuous distribution of charge. All that I need to do is find out the field or the force, whichever is required for us at the point P. If I need field, find out the field from this element, from this element, from this element, like this, too many elements, you find out the field, then add it up by making use of either summation or the integration, but integration is most suitable to find the net value. As a result of this, we have now three different types of continuous distribution of charges. Because I told you at macroscopic level, the word density plays an important role. Density means quantity. Here, how much mass is located within this space. That refers to what? That refers to density, amount or mass or quantity. Then, what are the three types of continuous charge distribution? First one is line charge distribution or line charge density. If the charges get distributed over a line like this or over a wire like this, the wire may be straight or it may be curved. The line may be curved or it may be straight. The wire may be even of ring shape. Suppose on the metallic ring, if the charges are distributed like this, then we call this as once again uniform distribution of charges. Here also the charge got distributed uniformly on this curved line. So this type of distribution is nothing but linear charge distribution. But what is linear charge density? So linear charge density is defined as charge per unit length. Charge per unit length. Suppose if I consider this length as equal to, let us consider this as delta L. Instead of delta L, let us consider this as delta L, because we are considering linear charge density. Delta L is the length, small elemental length. If I consider this delta L value as equal to 1 meter, then this length forms unit length. If delta L is equal to 1 meter, then we call this as unit length. So, charge per unit length is known as linear charge density. That means amount of charge which got distributed only on this 1 meter length. If I consider amount of charge distributed only on 1 meter length, that is nothing but linear charge density. Suppose if I want to find the linear charge density with respect to this entire length of the line, then what do I do? Lambda equal to, take the total length. Let the total length of this line or wire be equal to L. Right from this point to this point, let the total length be equal to L. Then What's the total charge now? Within this unit length, we have taken the charge as delta Q. Delta refers to small value because elemental length we have chosen, small length we have chosen. For small length, small charge. For a large length, what is the total charge? If I consider on this wire, let Q be the total charge on this entire wire. Remember, whatever charge you give, that gets distributed here uniformly. Suppose if you give 10 microcoulomb of charge, this 10 microcoulomb of charge is not going to distribute only at this point or at this point or at this point. It is going to distribute uniformly. Say for example, 1 microcoulomb, 1 microcoulomb, 1 microcoulomb, 1 microcoulomb, like that, right from year to year, it gets distributed completely. So, if Q is the total charge on this line, then linear charge density corresponding to this entire length can be written as Q divided by L, and it is represented by the symbol lambda. So I hope that you know about these notations: alpha, beta, gamma, theta, lambda. All these notations are Greek notations. I think you are all familiar about these notations. So this is nothing but linear charge density. Remember, it is a one-dimensional charge distribution because line means one dimension. That is why density mass per unit dimension I wrote here. I never wrote this as mass per unit volume because the general density formula is density equal to mass by volume. This I have not chosen here. So in general, I have chosen the density like this, mass per unit dimension. What is the unit dimension in this case? Length. It is one dimensional. So therefore, it is one dimensional charge distribution. Coming to surface charge density. Let us consider one surface. Here I have chosen one surface which is of square shape. Then on this surface I have chosen one small area. What is that area? Delta A, circular area. Let this area magnitude be equal to 1 meter square. What is the charge on this area within the small area? Delta A. What is this charge? Delta Q. Small area delta A, small charge delta Q. Then what is surface charge density? Surface charge density is represented by the symbol sigma. This is lambda and this is sigma. Sigma equal to charge per unit area. So this is nothing but charge per unit area. Okay. So this is the definition of surface charge density. If the charge gets distributed over a surface, that distribution is called as surface charge distribution. If I measure the density with respect to that type of distribution, then we call that as surface charge density. Distribution, surface charge distribution, and if I measure density, then it becomes surface charge density. Suppose if I want to find what is the amount of total charge, what is the total surface density of charge on this entire surface. Here this is surface density of charge only corresponding to this area. If I consider this entire area, then what's the total surface charge density? It is determined like this: sigma equal to, let Q be the total charge. Whatever charge you give to this surface, that charge gets distributed uniformly. See, there is no compulsion that we have to consider perfect shaped surface. Even we can consider irregular shaped surface, either regular shaped or irregular shaped. Here I have chosen regular shaped surface which is in the form of square. So if Q is the total charge which got distributed, once again if you give 10 microcoulomb of charge, 10 microcoulomb of charge get distributed throughout the surface, not at only one point. Here some amount, like that. So 0.5 microcoulomb, 0.5 microcoulomb, 0.5 microcoulomb, or 1 microcoulomb, 1 microcoulomb, 1 microcoulomb, like that it gets distributed uniformly. Then how do you write? Charge divided by unit area. So total charge is nothing but Q on the surface, then area, total area means area of a square, length into breadth, that means length into length, L square, where L is the side of this square. So this is how we can find out. Understand? Then coming to the third one, volume charge density. And one more thing you have to note about this. This is nothing but two-dimensional distribution, because this is the planar area, length and breadth, 2 dimension. Here only straight line or curved line, 1 dimension. So this is two-dimensional distribution. Coming to the third one, volume charge density. Now I am going to consider a sphere. This is not a circle, sphere I consider. See, circle is a two-dimensional planar figure on a plane, whereas sphere is a three-dimensional object or three-dimensional one. So let us imagine a sphere, and once again the charge given to the sphere got distributed uniformly. On this sphere, I am going to consider unit volume space, that means volume element, which is in the form of a cube, delta V equal to 1 meter cube. Okay, then what is the volume charge distribution? If the given charge gets distributed throughout the volume of this three-dimensional sphere, then we call that as volume charge distribution. Then what is meant by volume charge density? Volume charge density is defined as, once again, charge per unit volume. Okay, charge per unit volume. And it is represented by the symbol rho. Amount of charge that is contained within this unit volume cube, delta V. So that charge divided by unit volume, that gives the volume charge density. Suppose if I want to find what is the volume charge density with respect to this entire sphere, then what I do? I consider Q as the total charge which is distributed on the entire surface of the sphere. Then let V be the total volume of the entire sphere. Then I can write like this: Q divided by V, charge, total charge divided by total volume. But what is the volume of, but rho equal to Q by V. Q is the total charge on the sphere and V is the total volume of the sphere. But what can I write for the total volume? I write total volume as 4 by 3. Let us write here 4 by 3 by R cube. What is R? R is nothing but the radius of the sphere. So this is also one of the formula if you want to write for the entire sphere volume charge density. So this is three-dimensional. Sphere is a three-dimensional object. Now, what are the units for this charge? Coulomb, length, meter. Shift this one to numerator. Meter is shifted to numerator, it becomes per meter. This is Coulomb per meter, not per centimeter. Because I have written capital C, not small c. If I write small c, then it will become per centimeter. Then what's the unit of this? Charge, Coulomb. Area unit, meter square. Coulomb per meter square. Then what about the unit of this? Unit of this surface, this one, volume charge density. It is nothing but charge. Charge means Coulomb. Volume means meter cube. Shift this to numerator. Coulomb per meter cube. So this length is nothing but line element, and this small area is known as area element, and this cubical element in which I have taken in the form of cube is nothing but volume element. So volume element because 3 dimension, area element because 2 dimension, line element because 1 dimension. Now let us give the proof to Gauss theorem. Already we understood about the Gauss theorem. What is its statement? It states that suppose if certain charges are enclosed inside a closed surface, then the total flux due to all these charges is found to be equal to 1 over epsilon times the total charges enclosed within the surface. So, I have taken here the charges Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, Q5. Few charges are taken as negative, Q3 and Q5 I have taken negative, but whatever flux totally we get from all these charges, which is phi, that should be equal to, according to the statement of Gauss theorem, that should be equal to 1 over epsilon times the total charge enclosed within the surface. And Q is equal to Q1 plus Q2 minus Q3 plus Q4 minus Q5 and so on. And this closed surface enclosing the charges is known as Gaussian surface. Gaussian surface. So this is, if I consider this as flux, this is Gaussian surface. And we know very well that Gauss theorem can be applied only for the charges present inside the surface. If there are charges like this, say for example Q6, Q7 and Q8 like this. So to these charges, while stating or while applying the Gauss theorem, we do not take the charges which are present outside the Gaussian surface. Inside the Gaussian surface only should be taken. And one more thing you have to remember here is, suppose if the surface is not closed, even after containing certain number of charges, if the surface is not closed, if it is open like this somewhere else, then also you cannot apply the Gauss theorem, because the surface must be closed, that is first point, and inside that surface charges must be present, that is the second point. So remember these important things with respect to Gauss theorem now. Let us give the proof to this Gauss theorem. How? I am going to consider now a point charge Q. Okay. All around this charge, I am going to consider one imaginary surface. I consider one imaginary surface in the form of a sphere. On this sphere, I choose one small area. I am going to consider one small area whose magnitude is dA. The charge Q is kept at the point O, which is the center of the sphere. At this point, that means at the center of the small area delta A, what is the electric field due to this charge? The electric field at this point due to this charge can be considered like this. E is the electric field which is directed away from the charge, and this electric field is now perpendicular to this area. So it is all like this. All that I have done is I have imagined one sphere like this, inside which charge is there. Then on the surface of the sphere, somewhere here at this point, what I do means I am going to consider now, say for example, this is the surface. At this point, I imagine one small area like this, circular area. Okay, circular area. Can you see this circular area? And so this is how the charge is contained at the center of the sphere. Understand? Then at this point, what is the electric field? Now E is the electric field perpendicular to this surface area. So this is nothing but sphere. At the same point, let us call this point as P. That means, so this is the point I am going to consider, and I consider this point as P. Then at the point P, electric field is directed like this. Then at the same point P, to this area, draw one area vector. Area vector is always drawn perpendicular to the surface, directed outwards. That means in this case, area vector, let us say delta A, because here we made use of delta A. Area vector and electric field are parallel to each other. So thereby here what happened means the angle theta between the area vector and the electric field is equal to 0 since they are parallel to each other. Now what is the electric field at this point? So Q is the charge, electric field at P due to charge Q. What is the electric field at P due to charge Q? See, it is given by E equal to 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught Q by R square. I need to find the electric field here at the point P due to the charge Q kept at the center. So electric field, remember this point is on the surface because this is one side of the sphere. Then on the surface of the sphere only I have chosen the area delta A. On this area itself I have chosen the point P. Therefore, this is nothing but equal to R. R is the radius of the sphere. I can consider the sphere as a Gaussian surface because whenever we want to apply the Gauss theorem, we need Gaussian surface. Charges must be enclosed inside the surface. Therefore, your sphere itself is considered as Gaussian surface. So this is the electric field. Now, what I do means find out the electric flux coming out from the surface, only from this surface, only from this area delta A. So flux through delta A is, what do you write? It can be written as delta phi because I am considering only the small area, therefore the flux should be small. Delta phi equal to E dot delta A, dot product of electric field and area vector, which can be written as E into delta A into cos theta. So the magnitude of electric field vector E is E, magnitude of area vector delta A is delta A, only delta A. Then theta is the angle between E and as well as delta A. In this case, theta is equal to 0. Therefore, we get this as E into delta A into cos 0. That means delta phi now equal to E into delta A. So this is the amount of flux coming out only through this area. Now what I do means, I am going to find the flux coming out from the entire surface of this sphere. I can imagine the entire surface of the sphere to be made up of number of small area elements like this. Okay. So number of small area elements, identical area elements, each equal to delta A like this. Understand? Delta A like this. Flux coming out through this delta A is through this area is delta phi. Again, flux coming out through this area, which is equal to delta A, is also equal to E into delta A. That means delta phi. Flux coming out from this area, what is the magnitude of the area? Once again, it is delta A. Again, the flux also remains to be same. So since all these areas are identical and all these area from the center are found to be at the same distance, that means radius. Therefore, flux coming out through all this area remains to be same, delta phi like this. Add up the flux coming out from all this, flux coming out from this plus this, delta phi, like this, go on adding this. So that is going to give us the total flux coming out from the entire Gaussian surface. Why do we need the total flux coming out from the entire Gaussian surface? Because in order to apply the Gauss theorem, we need to find the total flux. So total flux through the entire sphere means Gaussian surface is given by phi equal to delta phi plus delta phi. I am going to add, that means I am going to sum up I write like this. Summation sign I write. All I write. What does it mean? All means I have to take all the areas and the flux corresponding to all these areas must be added. So I write this as delta phi. Add the flux coming out from all these small areas. That's the meaning of this. Add flux coming out from all these areas. Each area is contributing electric flux equal to delta phi. So if I write this as summation delta phi, what do we write for delta phi? Delta phi can be written as E into dA. Okay, take E outside because electric field at any point on the Gaussian surface remains to be same. So this is E sigma all into delta A. Instead of dA, write delta A. Okay. Substitute for E. What is E? E equal to 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. Then Q by R square. This is for E. Delta A is only small area. Summation of all areas, all delta S means it is nothing but the total area of the sphere. What is the formula to find the total area of the sphere? Area of a circle is pi r square, whereas area of a sphere is given by 4 pi r square. So therefore, here I write this as, how do I write this as? 4 pi r square. Because we can quote this inside the bracket, because summation all delta A equal to 4 pi r square, which is nothing but area of Gaussian surface. Area of Gaussian surface. So, what are the things that get cancelled here? 4 pi and 4 pi get cancelled. R square and R square get cancelled. Then, what is the equation of finally? Phi, total flux coming out from the entire Gaussian surface due to the charge Q kept at the center. Phi equal to, what is left here? 1 over epsilon naught times the total charge. What is the total charge inside the sphere? It is Q. So this is the proof. Therefore, hence it is proved. Statement is proved. Total flux is always equal to 1 over epsilon times the total charge.